look like early on when you're first, getting this off the ground into what it looks like now?
So our sales process in the beginning was my co-founder. And we got our real estate broker's licenses. Like, we really made sure to really deeply understand the business to make sure that we were building for a need versus building, kind of what we thought people wanted. And that's evolved. We've hired a head of sales. We've hired many sort of people under him. But in the beginning, it was really us that were driving, the majority of the sales in the business. And I think at any early stage startup, you see that, where it should be the founders that are out there being the salesmen for the company in the beginning, because they're the ones that know the product best. And the feedback that you get from the early users is really important, and that then goes into the next iteration of the company.
Were you looking for specific metrics? I mean, obviously revenue, profit, but were you looking for specific metrics that made you feel comfortable that you built enough traction to approach investors in the early days?
Revenue is a big one for us in our business. We're very our sales are offline. I mean, our business is all about connecting the online to the offline. So sales in our business are offline. So we're not looking at necessarily conversion rates from AdWords or things like that. We were really looking to make sure that we could build a sustainable, scalable business, and revenue was the most important one for us.
For us, sales, because again we're an e-commerce marketplace, right? People like me, people like you can go on the site and buy something. And for us, initially, we thought about, again, having come from Google, how do we crack that via organic search? We bootstrapped the company for about 8 months. And so we didn't have money to spend on paid advertising. We couldn't afford AdWords or anything like that. So we really tried to hack SEO. And we launched a company. I still remember this was something that seems like small potatoes, but we launched a company in mid-November, and within our first 6 weeks, we hit 10K in transactional revenue on the site. And we're like, who are these people who are coming to the subpar site and buying stuff? Because we were so embarrassed of our prototype. Still cringe thinking about it. And that's just grown from then on. So the way we think about it is, our sales volume to our buyers, we think about it as 80% of it should be organic. And now, ever since we got our fundraising round, we've started experimenting with 20% and doing some paid experiments. The maker side, getting the right makers and retailers on the site, that is very much, I email all of our makers, I know all of them by name. You can point to any product on our site and it will tell you who's the maker who makes that product. That is all about personal outreach, and again, reaching out to them, doing a phone call, really getting to that community, and we're starting to see that pays off. One of the things our retailers really associate with our site is the degree of personalization of customer service, which when you're excited about customization, really makes sense. So.
All right, yeah.
It depends. How about that? Cautionary tale. I've led global sales businesses in the hundreds of people. Leading sales forces is really, really, really hard. And it's really, really, really expensive. So before you do that, decide that, are there any other channels you could go, whether it's direct distribution, whether it's, obviously you're going to use technology to help boost your sales, but my only thought would be, before you start to hire outbound salespeople, have a clear understanding of the responsibilities and the care and feeding of an outbound salesperson. They can deliver massive rewards, but they're massively different than everybody you have in your business today. And you've got to be, as the CEO, you've got to be prepared that it's very different than managing a group of tech or a group of anything else.
Yeah. What about building a team in preparation for getting funded? So talk to us about where, obviously how lean you were in the early days. Was it just you and the founder? And then what were you thinking about and looking for in terms of getting the right team in place to approach investors?
This is something we struggled with a lot, actually. So when we started the company, it was me and my co-founder. We left Google pretty much a day apart. He moved back from Tokyo, I moved back from London, we settled in New York, and we're working out of his apartment to build this prototype. Now, I'm not a coder, neither is he, and so we actually ended up hiring someone to build our first prototype just to say, we had something out there, have a proof of concept. At that point, we had someone, a friend of mine actually in London, who said, I want to come work for you. And I said, look, I can't pay you. And he said, well, I really believe in this idea, so I'll come work with you, and then once you guys get funded, we can square it out. And so we brought him on board. The three of us are now working on this couch in the West Village. And then we went to investors, and we didn't have anyone that we'd hired, but we had a pipeline of candidates who basically said, look, if you guys get this round on board, then we'll join. And so what we led with is the strength of, me and my co-founder, our background, Scott, who's our head of marketing and business development, and then this pipeline of engineers that we were ready to bring on board the minute we had funding. We actually did not sign any hiring documents until we had funding on board. That said, the broader question is, how do you think about hiring your first team and hiring the first 10, 20 people? And I think that's really hard because there's this very intangible culture fit asset. Google used to call it googliness, which sounds like a bit like a cult. But it's very true, right? I think the way I think about the first 10, 20 people we bring on board is it's kind of like you're building a group of people who have a functional role during the day, but really they're there to help you build your business and solve the bigger problems you're trying to solve. And that's very hard to assess. And over time, I've made mistakes. We've hired some people that within a week we knew did not work, and I think the good thing we did is we fired them right away. A week out, we got rid of them. It was not going to work because they were very talented, very smart, but culturally it was not a fit. But that said, I think that the things I've realized is the things I try and look for now more than anything else is self-awareness. And I know that's, again, this very ambiguous kind of thing, but I think if you're self-aware, at least strive to be somewhat self-aware, then it's very easy for you to take criticism. You can adapt to different situations. You know the things you know, and you know the things you don't know. And ultimately, I think a lot of the other stuff can be taught or learned.
Can you give a bit more specific? What do you look for? What specific traits that gives you the impression that someone is self-aware?
I try and challenge them a bit or quite a lot during the interview and disagree. A lot of my interviews are not, market sizing questions. I tell them a real problem we're dealing with the company, and we brainstorm together about how to solve it. And then I knock down all their suggestions and decisions. Not in a mean way, in a very, very nice way, right? But I explain why, we've thought about this, we can't do that, and I sort of see how they respond, right? And there are people who thrive off that, who are like, okay, that didn't work, let me think of something else. And there are people who get very defensive. And I think ultimately with a startup, I don't care whose idea it is, as long as it's the best idea for the company.
Right.
And there's a little bit of an ego element. One brilliant engineer I used to work with at Google said, never hire rockstar engineers. No matter how tempting it may be, never hire rockstar engineers. And I think it's kind of trying to assess that element. Are you someone who's going to really invest in the team and not really care if it's your idea or someone else's idea, and just help the best ideas rise to the top? So
culturally is important. As far as how it connects to funding, though, it's part of the use of proceeds. So just make sure you're really accurate in how that human capital scales, how it gets allocated, because that's what you're going to use some of those for. That's why that use of proceeds is so important.
Elaborate on that one piece, because I think that's a very, very important piece.
The investors will ask, and you should too. You should have it regardless if they'll ask. The point is, what's my money going to be used for? How are we going to spend it? What's the cadence of the spending? Is it going to be towards human capital? Is it going to be towards renting engineers? Should we hire contractors? Should we buy the talent? What should we do with it? Should we make a talent acquisition like we did in Austin with some of the use of proceeds? Is it going to go to marketing dollars? Just how's it going to go? And you're going to have to be fairly descriptive in what that looks like. You just can't say SG&A, because that's not going to work. You're going to have to say it's going to go to this level of desk chair for this new hire, and here's what the associated costs are with those kind of things. So you'll need a use of proceeds to be thoughtful about it, because that's going to be what you're held accountable to.
I would say to get funded, you want to first create scarcity, and then sort of go out to investors and then just create time pressure. Because scarcity and time pressure, really what we've seen are the two things that are going to force investors to move. Investors like nothing more than to drag their feet and to wait until others are also interested. It's kind of like dating. And so those are really the things that we've done that have been successful as we've sought to fundraise.
It oftentimes a little bit too long before they take some of the first investor meetings. I think actually some of the first ones will be your worst ones, and you want to get them over with so you know how to answer the right questions. I also think launching a prototype, if you're a serial entrepreneur, if you've sold companies before, you can get away with a napkin idea or a PowerPoint idea. If you're a first-time entrepreneur, you can't. That's the reality of it, unless it's that 0.1% exception. And I think having a prototype that works actually gives you credibility that you can get something out the door. And you'd be surprised, launching things is a skill. Getting products out the door that are minimally viable but still work, although you will always be embarrassed of them, right? That's part of the fun. That is a skill, and that in itself speaks volumes. So launch a prototype.
I would say that it's really be sure, look yourself in the mirror and say, am I really solving a problem with this? Is it really solving a market problem, or am I just making it pink versus blue? That's not a point of difference. What is your unfair advantage against the competition, or what the current substitutes are in market? So understand what that is, and then be able to articulate and communicate that effectively. I would say those are the two for just building on what you've already heard.